Have you ever tried to make a button front romper with slit pockets? Hello! Welcome to Fashion Wonder. My name is Sunju. In this tutorial, we are going to make the Joelle romper from scratch. Let's get started. For this Joelle romper tutorial, start by assembling the pattern pieces. To make collar and collar stand, attach upper collar with fusible interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric. Place the right side of the upper collar and upper collar facing each other, pin along the edges, and sew 3/8 of an inch with seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance from 3/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch and 1/8 of an inch width around the point. Flip the collar inside out and use sharp needle or seam ripper to pull out the point on both ends. Press with iron to shape the collar. Replace with top stitch thread, adjust the stitch length to 3.5 and edge top stitch around the collar. Apply interfacing on outer collar stand piece. Next, place right side of inner collar stand upwards and lay the collar on top. Match the center notch on both pieces and pin. Stay stitch the two pieces together with 1/4 inch width to secure the position. Lay the right sides of the inner collar stand facing the collar together and sew 3/8 of an inch width along the seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance less than 1/4 inch width and flip inside out. Press with steam iron to shape the collar stand and edge top stitch around the collar stand. To sew button placket, lay the front right side top bodice wrong side up on the ironing board. Fold along the first notch and press. Then fold another time to reach to the second notch and press. Do the same on the front left side top bodice. Lastly, edge top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the folded edge to secure the button placket on both bodice pieces. To make shirt bodice, place the right side of the front and back bodice facing each other, then pin along the shoulder seam and side seam. Sew 3/8 of an inch width along the seam allowance and finish with overlock stitch. Press the finished seam facing toward the back bodice. Open the bodice and pin along the neckline with collar stand from one side to the other end. Sew 3/8 of an inch width along the seam allowance. With inner collar stand, Fold 3/8 of an inch width and stitch in the ditch along the neckline seam. To sew a sleeve, fold the sleeve in half, facing right sides together each other, and sew 3/8 of an inch width along seam allowance on the underarm seam. Finish with overlock stitch and press the seam toward the back of the sleeve. To assemble shirt bodice, match the front notch of the sleeve to the notch on the front bodice and back notch of the sleeve to the notch on back bodice. Then pin around the armhole. Sew 3/8 of an inch width along seam allowance and finish with overlock stitch. To sew shorts, grab shorts pocket pattern piece and lay on top of wrong side of front shorts pieces. Then pin along the curved pockets opening. Sew 3/8 of an inch width then fold over along the seam and press. Fold the pocket piece in half and match with notches on top and on the side. Then press to crease the center of the pocket. Overlock stitch the bottom of the pocket and stay stitch on top and side to secure the pocket and shorts pieces. Pin the front shorts together at the center front seams and sew 3/8 of an inch along seam allowance. Then finish the edges with overlock stitch. Do the same on the back shorts pieces. Place the right side of the front shorts and back shorts facing each other and sew 3/8 of an inch width along seam allowance. Then finish with overlock stitch. Open the shorts and press the seam toward the back. Next, Open the top bodice and pin along the waistline by pinning right side facing each other. Sew 3/8 of an inch straight stitch and complete with overlock stitch. Pull out 2 pieces of waist casing. Place right side facing each other and sew 3/8 of an inch straight stitch on both ends. Press the seam open and then press the bottom edge with 3/8 of an inch width fold. Slide the waist casing piece through the shorts and match the side seams and notches on front and back to pin. Sew 3/8 of an inch width along the seam allowance and leave about 2 to 3 inches opening. Sew edge top stitch 1/8 of an inch width along the folded side of the waist casing. Prepare 1 piece of 28.5 inch long by 3/4 inch width elastic. Use safety pin to attach one end of the elastic and slide through the tunnel of waist casing. Slowly push the safety pin until you reach the opening on the other side. Overlap the elastic about 1/4 inch and straight stitch or zigzag stitch to join the elastic. After joining the elastic, gently distribute the gathering around the waist and close the opening of the waist casing by edge top stitching. Mark the buttonhole position on the right side front bodice. The center of the button to the next center of the button should be 3 inches apart. Use buttonhole foot and setting of your machine. Refer to the manual and Fashion Wonder sewing tips on the website. Open the buttonhole with seam ripper and mark the button position with water erasable pen. Hand sew the buttons on the left side front bodice. Overlock stitch along the opening of the sleeve and around the opening of the shorts. Fold the opening of the sleeve 3/4 inch width inside and press. This will give you to mark the hemline correctly all around. Top stitch to finish and give another press. Lastly, press on all hemline, shoulder, and sleeve seams to give finish touch. Now you have it. This cute shirt-inspired button front romper is seasonless, classic piece that you can add to your classic wardrobe. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel to see what's next. Share your make on Instagram at #FashionWonderOfficial and follow us for sewing tips and inspirations. See you in the next tutorial. Bye!